This video is all about the fear of selling and buying a home at the same time right now in today's market. Now, I'm doing this a little bit differently than I've done in the past, and I'm out here in West Boynton in Melrose Park, and you can see there are some no trespassing signs, but I noticed this little park spot bridge while I was touring the neighborhood looking at some properties the other day, and I thought to myself, this would be an incredible place to do a live stream from. I love this wooden bridge, and this neighborhood is sick. It's out in West Boynton, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with the area and you hear West anything, you probably think that you're in the middle of nowhere and you're alone on Hope Island, away from all the cool things that Florida offers, like the beach, like the nightlife, like Atlantic Avenue down in downtown Delray. But the reality of it is, this is only 20 minutes tops from essentially all of those cool hotspots. And it's a little bit further to get to Fort Lauderdale or downtown West Palm, but we're talking about less than an hour, even if traffic's bad. But I was kind of hunting this area to see if I could take my kids out here and have a picnic. And best I can tell, this is an amazing spot to have a picnic, to throw the ball around, and have some good family fun. But truthfully, I did not intend to make a video talking about Melrose Park out here in West Boynton. Although, since we're on the subject, there are very nice single family homes that have big lots, which is unusual. And although there is an HOA in here, they are very unrestrictive. I think it's $65 a month, but relative to some of the newer communities that are out there, the price points are a lot more affordable. So you can get a home in here somewhere between $800 and $900, maybe a little bit more depending on the home and the upgrades and improvements. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to stay focused on the topic, which is the fear that exists right now for many folks that are in the situation where they may need to sell in order to buy. And I've heard so much misinformation here recently that I wanted to talk about some of it, because I've heard people say that the only people who are buying in Florida right now are cash buyers. That is not true. The only people that are buying right now are those that are from different states, mainly California, mainly from the Northeast, looking to escape those conditions to live here in South Florida or Florida in general. That also is not true. And while there are certainly folks that are moving here from different places, there is still a tremendous amount of local folks that want to move within the state. They want to move within the same city. They want to stay close to where they've already put down roots, but they may be looking to upsize or downsize depending on what their situation is. But the idea that it's all cash buyers or all investors or all relocation buyers is just complete nonsense. But that then begs the question, because right now we got mortgage interest rates at 8% and climbing. And today the Fed is going to meet to talk about their monetary policy and whether they're going to pause, whether they're going to raise rates, whether they're going to lower rates, or what they intend to forecast, what they will indicate that they may do in the future. A lot of people are going to put a lot of weight on those words. I'm not one of them, because Powell has made it very clear what he intends to do. And despite the fact we're in an election cycle and there may be other factors that are influencing what his language might be in this statement, although, again, full disclosure, I'm not an insider. I don't have any idea what's happening behind the scenes. I do know, however, that right now there's a lot happening behind the scenes in the housing market. And so, before I go off on too much of a tangent about the powers that be and the manipulation and the underreported numbers that I suspect are happening across the board, We cannot argue with the fact that inflation continues to uptick, and we're going into a very volatile season as we get into election season. So there are going to be things that change. There are going to be things that break, but irrespective of what happens in the market, financial or otherwise, people will still need to buy and sell homes, period. So good market, bear market, bull market, doesn't matter. People still buy and sell homes because they must. And and with that in mind, let's talk about the issue at hand, which is the fear that exists around selling and buying a home at the same time. Now, I'm currently working with some clients that had to do exactly that. And they did not want to take a mortgage. They did not want to pay the 8% mortgage interest rate that's out there right now. And assuming we were able to sell both of their properties, they would have enough cash in order to buy their next home. But when doing so, I know that if you have a home sale contingency and you're not past the the contingency periods. And I realized I just coughed there, and many of you have commented on the fact that I've been coughing recently and asked if I'm okay. Yes, I'm great. I have a cold. That's what it is. I don't have anything other than that, and I will be fine. But anyhow, getting back to the subject at hand. I know that if I've got a buyer and they're past the contingency periods in their sale of their home or property for sale, well, then I can then go to the the listing agent and advocate for them and get them to accept the contract, because there is very little risk. And when I say very little, I mean infinitesimal. It's something 99.99999999999% chance that it will close. Because if the buyer of their property did not close, they would lose an enormous amount of money, which no buyer is going to do that in today's market with the conditions of the market the way they are. Now, to be clear, that could change in the future, because I know that the market conditions can create panic. It can create irrational decisions. It can create emotional decisions, and people can become so scared that they take actions that are contrary to their best interest. But none of that is happening today, so I don't suspect any of that's going to happen on these particular transactions. So I have zero reservations around the potential buyers of their properties defaulting on the contract. But there is a small risk, which I'm aware of. That being said, they started their home shopping process, and they did not like the choices that were on the market, and they were starting to get really concerned that they would not find their dream home. But much worse than that, and I probably should have led with this, their main fear was that they might be homeless. They might not have a place to live when their properties sell. And while I knew that was not going to be the case, they weren't so sure. And one of the primary fears that many folks have when selling a home and buying another one is that they might be temporarily homeless. But I knew that was not going to happen, and I knew there were going to be solutions, and I knew we were going to find them the right home, which we did. They wanted a home in a place where they could put down roots. And if that tree isn't the most magnificent thing you've seen all day, I don't know what is, and it's put down some significant roots. But because that tree's so epic, I'm gonna do the rest of my video underneath it, in the shade, so I don't get a sunburn. Now, if you've been watching for a while, you know that I've shared that real estate is a relationship business. And you've probably heard me talking about getting into rapport with the other agents and the other parties that are involved in the transaction. And I've unfortunately found that a lot of times, many people refuse to participate in that process. They refuse to answer the phone. It's impossible to create a good connection or a good relationship with someone through text or email. And when that happens, it's very difficult to navigate through challenges if challenges present themselves during the contract to close process. And in this particular situation with the buyers that are under contract on their properties for sale, the agents have not been particularly communicative. And worse off, on one of the properties, not only is the agent not communicative, but the lender is not communicative, the property management association is not communicative, nobody involved in the process is communicating. And that becomes very frustrating for everybody involved, but it also becomes a real issue when the day before we're supposed to close, I learned that many of the things that should have been done and appeared to have been done, as evidenced by we have the items that are required, but the items that we had were moot because the lender refused to accept them, because the HOA had switched management companies and there was a new management company which now had to govern the process. But because nobody was talking and nobody knew about it, I had to intervene and have a forced intervention to figure all this stuff out so that we could, in fact, close. And one of the things that I found to be a little bit funny during the process is that my client said, "Chris, isn't this the other person's job?" And the reality of it is, yes, of course it's somebody else's job, but that's not how I roll. If the work is not being done, well, then I'm going to step up and ensure that it gets done. And I'll roll up my sleeves and go to work and do whatever has to be done in order to ensure that my clients get what they want, which in this case is simply to close and get their money and move on with their life in their new home. But in order to make that happen, I had to jump over so many ridiculous hoops and hunt down so many people that did not want to be found, which may seem unbelievable given that nobody's getting paid if this transaction doesn't close, but that's the reality of what happened. But because I know exactly what to do, I was able to reverse engineer the process and reach out to other buyers, lenders, who, I won't bore you with the discovery process on how I hunted these people down, but I had to find the lender who had approved the most recent sale and funded the most recent sale, which happened 3 days ago. And while I'm not paid to be a detective, I am actually paid to be a detective. And so I did all of whatever needed to be done in order for the buyer of my listing to actually be able to get the funding and close. And thankfully, all of my due diligence paid off. And while we did have to take a short extension of time, everybody's happy, crisis averted. And the other lender, who seemed to be completely asleep at the wheel, got all of the solutions that they needed in order for this other agent's client to be able to buy my listing. And while there were a lot of stressed out folks during this process, I was not one of them, because I knew for certain I would get the job done, and we did. But I'm sharing this because in this market, there are so many lenders out there that are failing out of the business, that are not experienced. They don't know what to do when things go awry. And there are many real estate professionals out there that have made a fortune over the course of the last few years because it was easy money. When interest rates were low and people were confident and they weren't scared, they weren't uncertain, it was very easy to do business, which is not what the market is like today. And who you choose to work with is crucial. And if you're thinking about buying or selling, please reach out, because we would love to help. And the best way to reach me or to connect with me is to click the link, which will be up above or down below in the ad copy, and we will connect right away. Check out my next video because I suspect you'll love it a lot. And until next time,